Welcome to the Driven Moms Answering Adversity interview series. Stories of success through setbacks from Mom Elevated. Together, we can shine a light on how normal challenges and struggles are, along with how we can overcome and rise above them. And today we have Janese with us to share her story. I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about it. So, can you briefly tell us just a little bit about your story to get started?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I'd love to. I first of all want to say thank you and thank you, Jessica, for having me here. I'm excited to share my story. But yes, so my story goes is I live on the Big Island in Hawaii. I have one son, he's 26, and I am a spiritual guide healer. So my title is the Kahuna Wisdom Keeper, which means Kahuna in Hawaii means a shaman, a priest, a priestess, someone who has spiritual knowledge. And this actually came through my lineage, my generation from my mother's side. So I come from a line of that. So I use that, the guidance of my ancestors, as well as energy work and clairvoyant guidance to help my clients to transform their ancestral karmic limitations that's been passed down through their lineage, connect them to their inner wisdom, reclaim their power, and have deep, unapologetic confidence with ease and create a life that they desire. So
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh. I love that. That's
you.
so inspirational. I can't even how many generations does it go back for you that you know of for
It goes back to Kamehameha the Great, which he was the king who ruled our islands in the
oh my gosh.
1800s. So, and yeah. So it goes back. Believe what the story I've been told is that my mother's side, it's we can connect our bloodline to Kamehameha.
Wow.
And so I believe we were the advisors for him back then. And that's how he learned how to um, rule and united the Hawaiian Islands.
Wow. Oh wow. That's so cool. I love
Yeah.
that's amazing. I
So
could just
what?
listen to you talk about that all
Thank-
day.
yeah. So that's the story I heard as far as like what I know of. I know my grandfather did it. My mom's father. So practice, but the generation got cut off after there. So after that, it never the knowledge of that didn't get passed through.
Oh,
So
okay.
for me, like I needed to reclaim that power within me because there was a block there.
Yeah.
There was like a shame or a fear of being a kahuna
Yeah.
because the history in Hawaii was like in 1819, we were banded of our practices, our spiritual practices, our music, our song, all of that. So we at one point it was not, it was like kapu, it wasn't, it was like law,
Okay.
and so it was forbidden. So because of that, it left like a cultural suppression,
Yeah.
and so that was left in my lineage, in my bloodline. So here I was 16. I had my son at very young age, but I also had a karmic wound with my mom. So
Yeah.
my mom and I just knew that all I wanted is just like I didn't want to be her growing up. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I went along my journey. I was 16, trying to struggling, trying to figure out how I'm going to make this, how I'm going to raise my son, all the things, right? I was young. And then about when I turned about 27, 30 is where I hit my spiritual awakening.
Okay.
Like I knew like I needed to do something different. And what happened was my son ended up moving away to the mainland, to California, to live with his father for a couple of years. So that left me kind of sitting with all of my stuff. Like, what the hell am I gonna do? Like, I'm a single mom. I want like my son to come back and live with me, and if he does, like, I'm gonna have to be able to take care of him and all these things. So that's kind of where I found like my spiritual awakening. I started doing meditations. I started doing clairvoyant training. And then he came back home 2 years later. And then about 4 years, I've been in the program. This is where he had his spiritual awakening. So
Oh,
while I was doing my training, he saw the difference and the changes and the shifts that I was doing, that he's seen that. And so as a teenager, at this time, he's a teenager,
yeah.
right? And moms who have teenagers, especially boys, okay. He didn't have the best grades. He like I always had to fight with him to get the chores done. It was always a hard struggle. It was always like two downs. He played video games a lot.
Yep.
He didn't want to interact and all that. So then one day he got his port card, right? Port card time came. Oh, it was always a big deal with port card. So I went in his room, told him, I go, hey, this is unacceptable. We got into the biggest fight, like toe to toe, head match. I could see the anger coming through him, but I knew the anger was not his.
Yeah.
It was not him. So he's like, I just want to punch something. He was like, Ugh. And I told him, punch me, punch me. He goes, no, mom, I'm not. And I was like, okay. So he went in his room. I go, well, cool off, go in your room. I'm pissed off. I leave. I come home. I'm like cooking dinner, getting ready for dinner. He comes out of his room and he goes, Mom, I'm sorry, but something is wrong with me. I need help. And I was like, okay. And he goes, I want to go to meditation school just like you. So I was like, oh, sure. So he signed up. 12 weeks. He became a whole different boy. Oh my God, like different. He was like coming out, talking story with us. He wanted to hang out with the family. He was engaging. I didn't have to tell him to do his chores anymore. Like he shifted, he transformed that anger that he was holding on to and was able to let it go. And I was like, oh, okay, this stuff works. So ever since then, I was like a believer, and I just saw like my family started to change. My mom even started to change. I healed that karmic wound with my mom, and my mom started to change.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's so beautiful. So then within that, when did you always know about your lineage and that the like Kahuna was part of that and it just connected at that point in time, or was that okay? So throughout that, I guess from when you were, 16 until you had your spiritual awakening around 27, 30, what adversity throughout that time do you think what's the biggest adversity that you had to answer throughout that? And was it the spiritual awakening that allowed you to answer that adversity and kind of rise to that? Or what do you think was like that pivotal moment where you're like, okay, this is it?
It was when my son moved to the mainland,
Okay.
and when his father said like, hey, we're moving, because at the time I was still trying to figure me out. I was young, a mom. I didn't even know barely who knew I was. And I had like I put a lot of pressure on myself. I felt that I needed to be strong.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't strong, then I something bad would happen to me. Or I couldn't be vulnerable. I couldn't show that part of me.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't show this part of me, I led into going out drinking, and I was not the best mom. I wasn't. And I had a lot of shame that I had to heal from, that time of my life. So that was one of the pinnacle moments in my life that got me on my spiritual journey, was feeling all of that shame of like, here I am partying, going out, drinking, me trying to suppress everything, because growing up as a child, I had all of these feelings. I've had these connections with spirit. My grandmother would come to me and visit me all the time. And anytime I would ask for guidance, like, what does this mean? And I was always told, like, oh, that's not good. We don't do that. No, 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 no. So this was me being a child, being very sensitive to all of this, but not having the guidance and support of that.
Yeah.
So I had to shut who I was down and had to be this strong person, for everyone, and be everything and every for everyone, even including my son, where I didn't even know who I was.
Yeah.
And so therefore that's kind of what needed to happen. When he came to me, he goes, Mom, we're going to be moving to the mainland. And I was like, okay. But he goes, Mom, but I'm okay. I want to go. I want to experience. I want to. And I was like, okay. So it made me feel like, okay, all right, he's going to go. And so I was like, all right, well, I need to give this an opportunity time for me to get my shit together. You know what I mean? I just need to figure myself out. So that's where I stopped all of that and I went into the spiritual journey.
That's beautiful. Do you think it was partially like you were able to let down those walls and stop denying that part of yourself and you
I
were
had to. I was forced to. I
yeah,
was at that moment forced to. My child was away. I was like, what am I gonna do with myself? What like I could fill up this time with more of this stuff that I've been doing, or do I take this opportunity time to heal and fix myself? And that's what I did. And when I did that, he came back home. And when I did, that's when he started his journey.
yeah,
Because there's no way, like if I was continuing on that shenanigan world, there was no way that would have happened. And he wanted to come home. He wasn't forced to come home. He wanted to come home. And then later on, as he got older, he goes, Mom, I never did want to go. Dad forced me to go. I always want to stay with you. And I was like, oh my God. And I told him, this is where I opened up to him because I felt such a shame, that I wasn't a good enough mom for you. And that's why you left and why your dad took you. And he goes, no, Mom, no. But I carried that. That was my story I told myself.
right.
But that story did serve me because that story helped me get on this path. But there was a point that at one point I had to finally let go of that story. And once we came together and we talked, I was finally ready to completely let that
Let
story
that go. That's beautiful though. And I find that so interesting because we hear so much about guilt, but I kind of wonder how much of it is actually shame and not so much guilt in what we're doing and I think that how you I guess, release guilt as opposed to releasing shame is similar, but still also different because if you're not identifying it correctly, you're probably not allowed to release it properly either. So I find that really the words that you chose, because I hear guilt a lot, especially in the mompreneur circle, but I feel like shame might be also another word that maybe we need to learn to identify a little so that we can release that feeling a little bit better and not just associate it with guilt so much. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Shame is such a bigger energetic hold
Yeah,
because guilt, it's okay. You can like kind of sweep it under the rug, right? It's
yeah,
easier to sweep. But when you feel the shame, it's you having to take responsibility. And not a lot of people is not ready to take that responsibility of the shame. So it's
yeah,
easy to feel guilty because it's easier to brush it under the rug. But
that's so
but
true.
the emotion and the energy around shame is a bigger charge. It's just
Absolutely.
there's a more punch to it. You know what I mean?
It consumes you a little more, yeah.
It gets you right in that lady bits, but it just. So then once you recognize that shame, what you're doing is, and that's where I needed to take responsibility
Yeah,
for what I did, and I was able to open up and be vulnerable with my son about it and letting go. I have to be strong for him and
yeah.
that masculine. So I could be that vulnerable for him so I could tell him my story and heal that story, and finally let that go.
That's so powerful. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to take note of that 100% as with you from here. So then on that kind of note, as far as the mompreneur avenue, entrepreneur in general, what do you think it is about entrepreneurs then that allows us to continue on through those kind of challenges and not giving up when it gets tough, when you hit a roadblock and you can take that responsibility, that ownership and move forward. What do you think it is about entrepreneurs that kind of gives us that little leeway of not giving up?
What I know, being in this entrepreneurship world, and also meeting a lot of people, women especially, who are entrepreneurs, what it is that it's a reflection of ourselves. So whatever struggles, blocks, limits that we have not dealt with, it's going to show up in our entrepreneurship when we show, because we have to show up. We have to show up to our clients, to the world, to other people. So wherever we've been hiding, you have to deal with it. So it's a reflection. It's why not a lot of people can be 100% successful in it, because they have to deal with their own limits that are coming up.
So true. That's so true. I've never, you know what, out of all of these interviews, it's the first time anybody has mentioned something like that, but that's a really powerful statement, because if it's so true, you have to face a lot of those and move through it, and instead of allowing it to just keep you down. Oh, I love that. It's a reflection.
Absolutely. And this is an opportunity. Entrepreneurship is what I feel is a great school for us to recognize our patterns. Or are we going to keep these patterns, or are we going to learn and grow from these patterns? Because that's going to also help you elevate in your business, the type of people that you're going to attract, the type of people you're going to serve, and you'll be able to serve in this really high level, in this beautiful way where you are both getting your needs met both ways. So it's like, reciprocated.
Yeah, it's a nice flow. Oh, look at you. I'm loving this. This is powerful for me. I can't even imagine those watching this are going to be mind blown. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. So what takeaway or overall lesson do you think that mompreneurs would be able to use specifically from your experience? I know I have a bunch already, but
Is letting go of having to be strong, having to have it all together, having it all figured out, because we don't, and that we can be, everything and all of it for ourselves first before we can give to someone else.
oh, absolutely.
You
And
know,
perfection, because we seek perfection. That seems to be what everybody thinks. Oh, they're doing it right. They're doing it correctly. But look at
but
everybody's
that's also
stories.
right.
So there's
Yeah,
always
totally.
something going through.
It's like a hardwire programming, and a lot of this is generational programming. A lot of this, like if you look at the women in your lineage, or like they have to be strong because that's what their world was, or they had to just push through it because that's all they knew. I knew that's what my family did, and I come from a really strong line of female women, but they come from a masculine standpoint that comes from having to be perfect, underlining that. And for me, I'm like, I don't want to step into that. That's not my jam. I need to do it my way, and that's not it. And I had to like really get very clear and find myself so that I can have this healthy balance between masculine and feminine within me, because what I've learned, what I picked up, what I've experienced was not that.
Yeah. That's where I think the point of your, like, the reflection, that's going to stick with me forever now. But the reflection of everything that's coming back at you and how you process it, how you handle it, and how you move through it, that's so powerful, because that can honestly make you stuck, or be the difference of breaking those generational cues that you've had forever and that you've seen passed down. There's so many things that I can look at, my parents even, and be like, "Oh my gosh, they don't even see it, half, like, they can't see it." So it's really interesting when you start working on yourself and you do start breaking some of those that you're like, "Oh my gosh, they can't," like, so many people have blinders on. And so it's amazing to see that. So I love that you brought up that topic. It's so important, so impactful. What do you think is the best way for others to get a hold of you if they would like to work with you or learn more about you? I'll obviously have the links in the description when I post this, but in case they're listening as well, so they can hear it and still.
There's many ways you can get a hold of me. Many ways. I do have a Facebook group where I do trainings and tips in there, and it's called Unapologetically You. And then I have a Linktree account where it has everything in there, what I do, what I offer, all of that. And then the best way to contact me is either by email or by just send out a DM. Hi, hi, friend request. Let's talk connected and just kind of reach out that way. I have a business page and I have a Facebook page and Instagram. So
That's
I'm
wonderful.
all out there.
And I'm
Thank
letting you all know right now, you will not regret it. Reach out, get to know her a little
you.
more,
Yeah.
dive into what she does. I love that. Thank you so much. I will absolutely have those links in the description as well. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for being a guest. I am honored that I got to listen to you and hear your wisdom and what you had to share with us. I can't even imagine how much people are going to take away from this. Your story is inspirational, and your willingness to be open about it is very much appreciated and needed in this space, especially mompreneurs. It can be lonely, it can be isolating,
Yeah.
and it's so important to hear stories like yours to know how you can rise above it and get over it. So thank you again. I'm so grateful.
Yes,
For
yes,
those
yes.
of you out there facing your own adversity, know that you're not alone. That is the whole point of this series and why we're doing what we're doing. When you need an extra hand or mind for brainstorming during your mompreneur journey, we would also love to work with you through the Mom Elevated Society. You'll find monthly check-ins for goal setting and assessing, and so much more for both your business and your mom life. And until next time, everybody, keep shooting for the stars.